Good morning, everyone. Brian here again with BMK Retro Gaming. This morning I have for us the review of the Atari VCS 2600 prototype game, Cracked. Now, as we know, Cracked was developed and released in ports for the Atari ST computers and the Atari 7800, but what some may not be aware of is there was also an Atari VCS 2600 port being worked on, which did not get released. It was developed by Randy Bauer and Bruce Williams to be published by Atari Corporation in 1988, and it would have had the designation number of CX-26142. And, well, the game is pretty much complete and all. As a matter of fact, from what I could tell researching it, there's not really much of an explanation for why it wasn't released. This isn't a 1983 North American industry and market for video games crash related type deal and all. It's later than that, so... And although, like, say, I'm not sure about the Atari ST home computer port, but with the Atari 7800 original library port of it, it is largely considered as a little bit of a, something on the screen there. It's considered a little bit more mediocre overall, though it's not bad at all in that one. Those who watch my unboxing videos would know I do have a copy of that one to review later on, so we're going to get to that too, which will likely bring up sometime after a comparison contrast video also. But anyway, although it was considered, or is widely considered, somewhat mediocre on the Atari 7800, it actually would have made for a very decent Atari VCS 2600 game had it gotten beyond the prototype stage and been released. So it's more or less complete, though just went unreleased. By the way, that does remind me I need to bring another note here, which is, it's kind of an unspoken rule with me, but I usually don't like to bring up the same game or ports of the same game in the same cycle. Say, have 5 consoles currently active to go through, so I prefer to feature a different game for each one rather than featuring a port of the same game for each one, or for more than one of them during the same cycle. Though, there is a little bit of an exception to that rule, which is kind of a loose one, even for me. You see, I mostly don't like to present the same game in a port or otherwise during the same cycle for original library games. As in this case, I may make an exception and say I may present, I'll probably end up presenting Atari 7800 Cracked later on for the Atari 7800 original library review. And so you say, okay, so why am I doing the prototype now? Well, that's because it's a prototype. For a prototype, a homebrew, or a pro brew game, I'm a little bit more loose, even though it's still not my favorite way to do it. I can make an exception here. It's my channel, and really it's not... If it were another original library port of Cracked instead of a prototype, I'd be much more reluctant. But in the case as here, where it's not 2 ports of the same original library game, it's just where I can make a little bit of an exception without it really seeming the same way. So I figured I might as well go ahead and go over that just a bit. Anyway, I don't want to talk about it for too terrible long. I prefer to get into gameplay a bit more than just sit here talking the whole time. After all, there's not a whole lot too complex to go over with it anyway. So, I should apologize, well, not necessarily apologize, but explain again that although I did use a mocked-up image of what a release cartridge of Cracked on the Atari VCS 2600 may have looked like for the announcement posts, that's what it is. I have, through my Hyperkin Retron 77 emulation hardware clone console, an emulated digital download of the game ROM, which is what we're about to set up with my with my Hypercube Metron 77 and play. I'm not sure if it ever was actually released on a physical cartridge or not, as, say, a reproduction cartridge or anything. I didn't find anything about that. Though, as we'll go over towards the closing of this video, there are ways out there to get and play at least the game ROM. So, I'm going to go ahead and get the Hypercube Metron 77 set up and ready to go, and we're going to take a look into the gameplay. Okay, so here we go with cracked Atari VCS 2600 prototype gameplay. Okay, here we go. Prototype right here. See right here it says Randy Bauer and Bruce Williams, or actually it's got, don't know why it's got that K in there because I didn't see it where it's supposed to be Bowker, but oh well. Probably just a little bit spelling mistake. We can see here it uses your controllers for your joystick. And we can see here one thing that I don't always see elsewhere. It's a Type F6 SC 16K Atari plus RAM. So, yeah, it's a pretty, they probably packed about as much into this as they couldn't have. Well, you know, by this point, 1988, they were perfectly capable of making, they knew the Atari VCS 2600 well enough and what could be done with it that they could really do more with it. Okay, here we have, it says 1987 Robert Nebb, I don't know why. 1988 Atari Corp. Controller's not being as responsive as I'd like, but I'll fix that in just a sec. So we're going to play it on, there we go. It's got a normal mode, easy mode, and an insane mode, which is a hard mode, and I'm not going to play it that way. Okay, and then we can see it has the eggs coming up. Basically, the idea here is you're trying to protect eggs of the species of the rare rare South American hornbill bird from these various pests which are trying to take them. I'm going to go ahead and reset because the controls are pretty simple. Your joystick moves your, it's a first-person shooter type game, and the controls moves your pipper to shoot with, and you press the button to fire. Then, if an egg that's been stolen is released, you go, you are able to catch it by pressing the button on the stolen egg. If once you shoot the critter and see, I've got the egg right here, and then you press the button again to release it back into a nest. And your goal is to try and protect as many eggs as possible from being taken by these various predatory creatures. Okay, let's see, that's 6, 7, 8. Okay, looks like we got about 11 left. That was stage 1. These guys right here that look kind of humanoid are supposed to be kind of like a gorilla, or so I read they're supposed to be. Not doing a very good job of shooting them. Okay, when you are ready to return one to a nest, you just press the button again once you've shot him and retrieved your egg. 2 left. Great. Now we have the 3rd level, Rooster Wrench. Here you're trying to egg these roosters as they pop up. You have to readjust the sights to be where they are. And the number of eggs down there, it says 6, is how many I have to fire with. It's basically a thing that gives you extra points each time you hit one. And I think as I've seen, you can lose some points every time that you miss them. In the Atari 7800 port, they would egg you. Ye old joke tree. This is level 1 again. I don't think so, and I'm going to put this one down here because it's easier. Down to 1 egg. Well, that means all I have to do is sit here and snipe at whoever tries to take it. That's an advantage to being nearly out of it. Then Subway Mania. It's supposed to be a subway level, but as it goes, it kind of looks more like you're in a sewer. Anyway, the humanoid guys are supposed to be kind of like gorillas, so they're probably one of the creepier looking things that you can find on here. Because seriously, not knowing they're supposed to be like gorillas, think, oh, why is a person interested in taking the eggs? Basically, the manual would describe it as though all these creatures are trying to take the eggs for their own nefarious, evil purposes, but it seems to be over the top for me. Probably they're just trying to take them so they could eat them if they got the chance. Or so we would think. As opposed to, say, like the Atari 7800 port of this game, this one only has 3 levels, where that one has, I believe, 6. So it's a bit more slimmed down, but it does a pretty good job for what it's doing with it, really. This would actually, again, it may have seemed more mediocre on the Atari 7800 port, but on this one it actually makes for a pretty decent game. The roosters kind of look a bit creepy here, I guess you could say, but they look a little bit, they actually look like they're pretty well done. They're in there pretty well. And you don't have limited ammunition or anything. You can fire as much as you need to. The only thing is, you know, when you're switching over from shooting at these guys to actually trying to retrieve an egg like that that's just been lost, well, when you have more than 1 egg left to protect, that can mean that you're risking the other eggs that you're not shooting pests trying to get while you're trying to retrieve the other one and get it back to where it's supposed to be. Darn it, lost my last egg. I will try it one more time just for the heck of it because, well, I managed to do better than that before, and it's actually a lot of fun. Like I said, this is actually a pretty good game for being the first-person shooter type and all. And this would have been a very nice port for the Atari VCS 2600 had it been released rather than skipped. Again, no real explanation as for why it was not actually released when it would have been a good idea to me. This would have worked. Mediocre on the Atari 7800 probably would have been a bit better regarded for this one. I'm already down to 1. No, 2. Yes, it can get tough to keep them all without losing more eggs, but this is how it goes. I kind of like the little Rooster Ranch game because it's kind of a cool concept that you're trying to egg the roosters as how to deal with them. That got me up to 5,000 points. No, you don't. Yeah, I don't think so. Looks like you get 200 points for shooting most enemies, especially if they have an egg. 100 points for just shooting them if they don't. Yeah, no. And that's 100 points on that one. Okay, 8,800. And it basically just keeps going until you're out of eggs. Not a super complex game concept. It would have actually possibly made for a nice light gun game, maybe, except with the light gun, unless they programmed in for you to catch a falling egg with it by taking another shot and release it with the next one, that part wouldn't work without having more than one controller. So I kind of see why it stayed a joystick game. Darn, and there goes the last egg. 9,500, didn't quite get 10,000. Anyway, I think you guys have a pretty good idea with the gameplay by now anyway, so I'm going to reset my volume to where I had before. Okay, so that was Cracked, a prototype game for the Atari VCS 2600. Is it pretty good? Oh yeah, I think so. Like I kept saying, on the Atari 7800 original library port, though I'm not sure, as I didn't get a chance to look into much of the Atari ST home computer port. Well, at least the Atari 7800 original library port was considered somewhat mediocre, though since I've got my copy and have checked out playing it some, I think it's pretty good. And this one here for the Atari VCS 2600, had it been released, rather than just remaining a prototype, would probably have been regarded even better than the Atari 7800 port, because it's pretty impressive for the Atari VCS 2600. They probably used everything they could pack into the cartridge to get out of it, even though, you know, as opposed to, like, say, the Atari 7800 port, this one only has 3 levels or 3 stages that you play through. With the tree, and then you have the sewer and the Rooster Ranch. Well, there are like 3 more with at least the Atari 7800 port, but still, the 3 we got here for this one is rather impressive for the Atari VCS 2600. It looks and plays pretty well, it's pretty smooth, and it is very challenging even on just easy mode, so I'd say it's pretty decent. Anyway, I do have a couple of recommendations and links for you guys. My preferred YouTuber's High Retro Game Lord has a short review on it, and then Greg Dead Games has one where he plays. It's a pretty long one, I think around or close to 2 hours, maybe between an hour 45 minutes and 2 hours, where he plays on some high scoring, which is his thing. Usually his videos are more high scoring attempt type videos. Anyway, I will leave recommendations and links to those for you guys so you can check those out, as well as to AtariProtos.com for those who may care to read up on it further. And also It probably applies more to the Atari 7800 original library port, but I'll leave the one for the Wikipedia article as well. Now, as far as where you could possibly find this and all, I don't know that it's been done in a reproduction cartridge or anything, at least not that I'm aware of. But if you go to Atari Mania, atarimania.com, I didn't get a chance to check them out and see, but it looks like they have where you can either just go ahead and play it, or where you can download a digital copy of the game ROM from them. I would imagine, even though I didn't check into it for sure, that since it's for an old prototype that was unreleased, an old unreleased prototype game, that it probably would be a completely free digital download of the game ROM, so feel free to check that out if you guys want. And I'm also pretty sure that as far as digital downloads of the game ROM, there are probably a number of other sources where you could find it as well, which is typically the case with old unreleased prototype games. You usually can find a digital download of the game ROM if it's been found or known to exist and released somewhere. Usually you'd have to be, who would actually want to charge you money for something that is an unreleased property from back in the day? Wouldn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, you can probably find them that way if you would like to. Feel free to also explore with a browser search and all, Google whatever, and see what else you guys can come up with. In fact, anyone who does find some more, feel free to let me know down in the comments section here on the video or any of the posts for it if you happen to find some other sources for finding it. I'd certainly be interested to find out. I just don't personally always have a whole lot of time with everything else I put into these things to research that aspect as thoroughly as I may care to. I do have other things going on besides just this too, you know. Anyway, if keep your eyes peeled, because I should be later on today going ahead and putting up here on Facebook and on my feeds on YouTube and Twitter the announcement post for what the Wednesdays in television original library view is supposed to be. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in catching that. And in the if you enjoy my a big shout out to my Atari VCS 2600 Facebook group as well. Love you guys over there. And hopefully this video upload will not be too terribly long in becoming available. So anyway, if you enjoy this channel's content, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And please don't hesitate to leave any questions, comments, or suggestions down in the comments section below. You guys take care. Have a wonderful Sunday. Excuse me, a bit parched. And hopefully I will see you guys back here again on this coming Wednesday.